a stand?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. We could get some accommodation in here for you, like a rail or something.
Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. Would you all please, well, no, let's do the roll call first before we stand up. Never mind, we're all here. Yeah, no, we're all here. I just pronounced it. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 3 is director announcements and reports or comments. Anything from the mutuals, Peter?
Nope.
Thank you. Ojai Water Conservation District, Jim?
We met and there was discussion on the diversion, which the county did clean out.
Yeah.
But the pump spray bar system, they cleaned it out partially so that the sump is not clean, but the top is clean. So water flows in. But the pump and the spray bar system is all busted up and
Really?
not in working order. So talked with Glenn, trying to get another meeting, because at this point it's now next year, but keep the process going. So try and get another meeting of all the interested parties, similar to what he arranged last time.
Yeah, thank you. Johnny, City of Ojai?
Only that the city council joined with OBGMA in supporting the summit, and I think, I don't know if it'd be a majority of the council will be attending next week up at the Ojai Valley Inn.
Well, please offer my apologies. I won't be there on Monday. I have to go to Los Angeles for a doctor's appointment. Casitas Municipal Water District, the water level, we're at 45% full, which is approximately 107,000 acre-feet in storage. That's good.
Oh, you are Casitas.
Yes. I did talk to Glenn Shepard. I sent him an email in early April, and they're still working on the possibility of another meeting out there of engineers and such. I talked to him the other day on the phone, and he's still trying to work it out. So when it happens, I've asked some people to attend, like Jeff Palmer, engineers around the valley, and hydrogeologists as well. Other people that are involved in the issue, to put our heads together at the spreading grounds to see if we can figure out how to fix it and make it work for the upcoming water year. For the CFD, do you have anything, Richard?
Oh, just that I'm going to be on a panel at the Water Summit on Tuesday. The title of it is Benefits of Resilience. Other than that, I'm not sure what exactly is expected. I think Jordan is on it as well, so.
I'll be joining Richard on that, and I'm not quite sure what it does either.
Seems to be a popular word these days.
Well, I've found in just the little bit of homework I've done and people that have talked to me, the word resilience, sustainability, both of those words have been worn out, so.
Well, sustainability for sure. I mean, I looked it up, and as far as I'm concerned, it only means keeping the status quo. I don't know what everybody else thinks. That's not very good. All right, general manager comments. Anything, John?
Just a couple items. The annual report has been filed with the Department of Water Resources.
Yes.
It was done on April 1st, so we met their deadline. I have not heard anything back other than they send out an automated email to the fact that that happened. The second thing is, I want to make sure the board knows, and I guess we'll be talking about it later, but next month I will not be here. I'm gone for 20 days and I'll be out of the country. So from May 10th to May 29th.
Well, can we live vicariously and know where you're going?
I'm going to Europe in 9 countries.
Wow, okay,
over
have a good
20 years.
time.
Yeah.
Bring back water.
Yeah. That's it. Don't forget that. Anything else, John? Thanks. Item 5, basin status reports. Jordan.
Thank you. Happy to report the continued rise of water levels in the Keywell area in the basin. Today we actually grabbed a manual water level, not just an automated one, of 134.60 feet. That is very near the report from last week's 134.29 feet. That is reflective of about a 73% capacity within the basin. A mountain storage of about 58,400 acre feet and still rising. We grabbed that water level manually today to be able to double check the automated logger readings that we take. And what we've been able to do on at least a bi-weekly basis is update to the website the water level hydrograph for these wells. So that's something that CC's been able to maintain and keep updating through the peak of this year. We may be reaching it. You will no doubt notice many wells pumping in the basin, a lot of irrigation given the lack of recent acute rainfall, despite being well above average overall for the year. All the creeks remain flowing across the basin that we've seen, at least San Antonio Creek, from the headwaters to the ocean. So there's no daylighting groundwater to report acutely there, although there certainly are contributions that are occurring. We just can't map what's flowing all the way across. Did you have a question, Cece?
Yes, I'm sorry. How many acre feet?
58,400.
58,400. So it's the same that shows in item 5 of the graph. And we'll update that probably next week once we download the rest of the data.
Terrific. That's a good report. Thank you. Anything else? Any comments from the board? Yeah, it's public comments. Public comments are next. I have one card. Mr. Daddy.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted that we've got some water. I'm not so delighted that we're doing things down the road, and I'm not going to talk about 8E because that's on the agenda. I'm going to say this. I think there's an incredible frustration level with the amount of time and money sent to not recharge the aquifer. I think we'd have been better off spending a ton of money putting the conduit back from Matilaha and directly recharging, like we have in the watershed report, page 77, that shows that that thing was taken off to be a fire catchment in '85 because of the Wellman fire. That thing worked well for us. I'm shocked that the people in the upper area of the Ojai, especially the farmers, especially the water users, aren't screaming about getting that conduit back up. Now, Casitas is in the middle of going in and repiping and replumbing and doing a bunch of things. And I'm just wondering how long we're going to go ahead and continue to fail year after year after year doing the same thing we've always done and not getting the water that's necessary. Water is going to be tough. We're only going to have a few weeks to grab all the water we can, and apparently it hasn't worked well. And I think it's time to come up with an entirely different thought process and an entirely different use. That dam was built in '47 for the single purpose of recharging the upper aquifer, and it was a 12-inch pipe, and it was a conduit, and it was gravity fed, so it worked automatically. It was mechanical. It worked well. So I really think that there needs to be a time limit on this effort. What are we, 5 years, 6 years, 1.8 million? That's too much effort, and it's way too long time. We don't have that much time left. we're going to have to do things significantly different to get that going. Anyhow, that's it. Thank you.
Hang on, Bob.
Yeah.
I'm going to respond to this. I hope you don't mind, Peter.
No.
The Matilaha conduit is in place. It's a 30-inch line, I believe.
That'd be great.
Pardon?
They're 30 inches better than 12.
Well,
That would be
but
great.
it's full of water. It's what delivers water to the Ojai Valley. You can't just change it over to raw water because you would be taking water away from all of our customers in the Ojai Valley. So that argument was bounced around quite a bit by a previous president here, Jerry Conroe, and it's just not usable. It's not true. Find another way, Bob. Thanks.
Well, and again, I appreciate that, but what I'm going to say is successive failures are just no longer adequate. Doing the same thing over and over, which we've done, isn't going to be tolerated forever.
Well, I hope that's not in relationship to the water that we are delivering consistently through the Matilaha conduit.
No, not at all. No, it's not that. It's that we're not consistently recharging the groundwater. We're not getting the water.
We're working on it.
Well, I think there needs to be a time frame where we're working on it stops and we're getting it done. Because we can only work on it for so long. If we're going into year 7, we're still working on it, that gets to be a problem. And I think it's
Well,
time to come up with a whole different idea.
All it takes is money, and the money comes from the pumpers.
Well, the pumpers aren't the only ones that are getting the benefit. There are ways of spreading costs around, and there are bonds and other alternatives. And if that's what it's going to take to get a good, reliable recharge, then let's go in that let's go in that direction and figure out what it's really going to cost to get done. We didn't have a problem raising $60 million last time. I doubt that raising a few $1,000,000 to get an adequate, reliable system to recharge is going to be that difficult. So, the community will aid in that effort, but it is something where we need to come up with a different solution.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Do we have another one? Okay.
Wait, here's Renee. Just a quick question.
Okay. Oh, we have a card from Renee Roth.
Renee Roth is here.
Thank you.
I just want to be counted as being here today. Okay, I'm looking at item number 3 on the agenda. Is that okay?
Sure.
Talk about now? I don't know if it's going to be talked about.
Item 3 of the director announcements, you mean?
No. I'm looking at this page 3 up here.
Page
Oh,
3.
page 3, okay.
Everything's static.
Okay.
And Jordan already knows about it because I mentioned it to Cece. She went and talked to him. And I noticed that you're changing the wells that you're looking at for this 4/11 date. So you're getting totally different well data. And to me, when you look at these, it helps to see kind of consistency from the wells and if there's a reason or an explanation for why you're switching wells here. Just
Well, if we could, I'll answer that. If we could train our wells to be good forever, we would do that. But there's a mutual that's down completely, and I believe there's another one on the other side of the San Antonio, the Gorham. I think it is. We're working on.
They're both, 6 and Gorham are both not on here, so.
That's right. They're down, and we're fixing them. And we have a larger project for the rehabilitation of the well field in progress. So we're going to get the junk well field back up and running shortly. You get what you pay for.
Well, and all I'm just mentioning is the gallons per minute that you're pumping on these charts would be good information to track on a monthly basis, right?
It's quarterly, actually.
Well, it's more monthly here, January, February, March, April 19.
Is it monthly? Okay.
So I'm just asking, is there any consistency or reason, or that's all? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Anybody would like to? Did you almost put your hand up?
If it pleases the board, I can speak to some of this. These are reports that we receive and have received for many years, decades, in fact, from the Southern California Water Company representative that was on this board, followed by the Golden State Water Company representative, and ultimately these come from the Casitas, Ojai service area, folks who are actually taking these measurements. The well field in question really consists of two. There's the San Antonio well field, which is east of San Antonio Creek, and the old Ojai Mutual well field, which is west of San Antonio Creek.
Thank you.
So over the course of the data set here, we, with one exception, have at least one well represented that's in the west field and one that is representative in the east field. Because the wells are not always operational and not always pumping, the wells that are reported are those that are. Now, unfortunately, when we have such a tight well field, there's issues of interference. When one well is pumping, the static water level of another is affected. So these are really intended, I think, more to provide a snapshot of what's going on with the ultimate source that serves the city of Ojai from this groundwater basin. So it's a snapshot. It's not the most scientific evaluation or report, but there certainly are data within the SCADA systems and within the more acute and robust measurement tools that are taken in and near this well field.
So are you saying that these are comparable wells for looking at the other data? I mean, you've got from 2017, now 2019, are they in the same areas?
Sure. So San Antonio, so if we go to October 25th, 2017, you have San Antonio number 4 and Mutual number 6. Today's measurement is from San Antonio number 3, close to San Antonio number 4,
Okay.
and Mutual 4, which is close to Mutual number 6.
Okay, that's.
So are they apples and apples? Maybe Macintosh and Granny Smiths.
I mean, the elevations are similar, and the GPM is really only relevant to the pumper on efficiency, not to
The pump efficiency, the well efficiency,
It's
and,
not something.
and of course the season.
It's not really meaningful then, okay.
It doesn't help when the electricity blows a hole in our pump, though. It really does put it down for a while until we can get a new pump. And I hope it's grounded well.
I hope that answers the question.
I would find it really interesting if you could put together a 10-minute presentation on the well field. I've only been out there once, and I'd like to know more about it. Would you mind doing that for the next meeting?
Not at all.
That's good. Wouldn't want to fire you for that. Okay.
2 more votes.
All right.
Or 5.
Since there are no more public comments, we'll move on to consent items, and we have the minutes from March 28th, 2019. Any corrections, additions, complaints, compliments? Compliments go to the chairman, and complaints go to, no, never mind. Stop it. We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please? Johnny. Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
No, John, correct.
Director Dilkey?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Johnston?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Becker?
Yes, thank you. Item 8, action items, Treasurer's Report, March 2019, Budget Spreadsheet, extraction, that's extraction, not extradition, right? Okay. Charges by period. Who wants to do this? Do you want to present it?
Sure.
This 8A?
We have the disbursement register and typical payouts.
Okay, let's take it one at a time. Any questions on the disbursement register? Nope. We'll move on to treasurer's report.
Any questions on the treasurer's report?
Hearing none. Budget actuals. Any changes? Any comments?
I have one question. Under hydrogeologist, I'm thinking that possibly I put some items that should have been in annual report.
Let's wait till he gets back in the room, okay? Is that okay?
Yes.
Good.
And where are we reading from?
3842.
The, no, 32, all right.
Line,
Line
got it.
32.
Yeah.
Line 30, 31, and 32. I'm thinking that some of those.
Oh, you mean the annual report costs?
No.
I
may
might
have
have
been.
included in there because we just did one.
You might have, or did you?
If he doesn't break it on his bill, then you just put it to hydrogeologist.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we just, and the annual report just came out. So I don't know if I've gotten that bill for it, so I will work on that. I'm thinking,
Okay.
because I was just looking at the total budget for 18-19, and some of it might go into annual report, and there might be a few things he's doing for the Sigma as well,
Yeah.
ongoing.
Sure.
So I'll talk to,
Well, here he is. Jordan. Could you look at the budget actuals, please, line 31 and 32? Can you recall whether or not the $2,000 for the annual report was in your hydrologist?
These are costs that will be in our March invoice, which has yet to be completed, but it's below that amount.
Okay,
okay, so I'll take it out then, and none of it is
the 2,000,
is
right?
going for the Sigma. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, we're
Okay.
holding off on any groundwater sustainability
Okay.
planning or other Sigma-related activities per se.
Oh, yeah, we could really get it done with $2,000, right?
The annual report, yes. The groundwater sustainability plan would leave something to be desired at $2,000 budget.
We'd be
Thank
the-
you.
Okay, you got that corrected, and you'll change the total expenses to reflect that?
No, so he's
Well-
saying basically that it's accurate.
Well,
He hasn't put it in yet.
No,
I
it'll
have-
come in the next bill, so this is accurate.
Yeah, this is just a projected budget
Oh, okay,
expense.
all right,
Would be if you have the invoice today.
all right, so this one's okay.
yes.
Thank you all. Any comments on the OBGMA extraction charges by period? And if there's anybody in the audience who wants to jump up and say something, please do. Bruce?
No, I won't say that you're charging us 48 cents more than our half share of your monthly rent in the office, but that's okay.
Oh, thank you.
What was that?
48 cents?
We do $400.48, and half of the rent is 400, so you're 48 cents over.
Overcharge.
Well-
I won't mention that.
Yeah,
That
that's.
was the stamp. That was the stamp.
Oh, yeah, that was the stamp.
Don't ask for any future comments.
Okay.
I
Teach 'em.
think it was just 400.
Okay, any questions, comments on the extraction charges per period?
I have a question, because I'm looking at your extraction charges on your budget actuals. And it looks like you got 25,000 in October. And then it drops down to 10 and 2 you back up in January, because more people are having to pull water out because it's.
No, it's the reporting periods.
Oh, so it's
So
the
it's
report,
quar-
so they
so-
don't reflect.
So
that.
we report quarterly, and it's due the month following the end of the quarter. So October is probably always your biggest one, and what will show for
June,
April.
July, and, or August, August, September, October, June, July, August, okay.
June, July, August.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah,
what
So,
that is.
so April is gonna be the smallest of a month where where money comes in, basically. Cause most people will be zero or close to zero.
Because I'm looking at January, February, March 2019, and ag has 24 acre feet, so then you don't have those extraction fees for,
And January and February, if February and March are people just trailing in, cause technically it was due January 30th,
Are you looking at this sheet?
monthly.
I'm comparing these.
Yes, I
to
understand.
where they show up in your report, and it looks like your extraction fees, your extraction charges don't correspond with the
That's,
numbers.
that's correct, because this extraction charges is, by accrual, and then the, budget is by cash.
All right.
So when I put it into the extraction charges, columns, I do it by the period it was taken from.
When you do the extraction charges on your budget, comparing your budget to your actual.
No, then
You
on,
don't accrue them on your budget.
correct,
Okay, it's cash.
yes. And John and I have talked about how to sync those.
All right.
Yeah, I had that same question, so.
But is there a reason for not doing it? Or we just haven't done it in the past?
Well,
These are actual, so it's as it comes in.
Right.
So from a cash standpoint, and this is telling you when the water was used.
Yeah.
So, if,
You just stay with the budget
yeah,
projections.
it's actual.
Right. I mean, if you want to
The
know where
the more problematic one is really the October-November cash, which is for the year prior extraction.
Okay. That's why it's so. I
That's
would expect it to be normally large anyway, though,
for October. Yeah.
because that's the end of the summer.
Okay, actually, if people are going to speak, they should come up to the microphone, or if they don't, then we need to repeat the question that they asked and answer it, because it's not going to make any sense on the camera. Sorry. If there are no other questions on the extraction charges and the budget spreadsheet and the treasurer's report, we need a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Can we have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Could you call the roll, please?
Director Hages,
Yes.
Director Johnston,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Bilkey,
Yes.
Chair Beck.
Yes, thank you. Item 8B, board meeting date change. The board to review and approve changing the May 30th board meeting to May 23rd, 2019. Does anybody have a problem with that? Any?
So you miss it.
Yeah, I'll miss, it doesn't matter what date it is, I'm not
Oh,
gonna be
we-
here. But I'll coordinate with CC and whatever agenda items we need to talk over the next week or two,
May 24th?
because I'm gone in 2 weeks.
And I would like to take a vacation on May 28th, so.
Me too.
Yeah, I would like to, too.
It'd be nice.
I've postponed it 3 times.
Motion, we're trying to approve.
Approve CC's vacation. Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
the 23rd.
I move, we move the meeting to the 23rd.
Second.
Oh,
Do you need a motion?
I already have that down.
Okay.
How did I do that? I don't know how that worked,
Clairvoyant.
Second.
I guess. Don't call me Claire.
Okay, Claire, yeah.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Johnston,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Thilke,
Yes.
Chair Baggerly.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to discussion items. 9A is the groundwater management plan objectives. John?
I put a memorandum in your packet today. Last meeting, you had a lot of discussion, and as I recall, there were concerns about focusing just on that one page that had been put in the agenda previously. And I think the discussion kind of worked its way toward, well, what is it we really want to accomplish, and what are the goals, what are the kind of objectives we want in a conjunctive use agreement? And so I put this memo together just to throw some questions out. I don't know how much the board wants to spend on this tonight, but I thought maybe you could at least look at these. Are there other questions that need to be asked? Or should some of these go away? But I put up an easel board if you want to capture anything, and we can spend a few minutes doing that.
I
I don't know what the board's pleasure is, but,
think we skipped 9A.
We did?
oh, we did.
Groundwater management plan objectives? That's what I called out. And I don't have them in the packet here.
Yeah.
That's from
sorry.
Jordan.
That's correct. It says they're here to provide update on groundwater management plan. I believe that's probably a relic of a previous agenda item, in that the board approved the groundwater management plan at a previous meeting. So I think
Right.
The update is, thank you for approving several months back, and we are working on targeting specific objectives, such as that which Mr. Mundy was introducing as a teaser, I think.
Okay.
For item 9C.
Not a spoiler alert, though.
No, not at all.
No.
Coming
Okay.
attractions.
Well, and if I recall, I think, bear with me just a moment, but I thought we were going to keep this forward in front of the board monthly, but let me make sure that, I think it just may be the conjunctive use policy. Nope, that shouldn't have been on the agenda. I apologize.
It's okay. All right, we'll move on to 9B, City of Ventura amended cross complaint. Anything new?
Well, I understand that there's a mediation.
There is.
May 22nd, I'm sorry, not May 22nd, there was a mediation on April 22nd. It was a one-day mediation for Judge Comar. My understanding from talking to a couple of different attorneys involved is that the discussions were very preliminary.
Can you drag the microphone over there for him, please?
I mean, not surprisingly, there was not a whole lot of
Movement?
movement, issues resolved, so on and so forth. So discussions were preliminary. I also heard that there's some consensus around a proposal to stay the litigation while the parties talk about settlement. That's still in the works, but it seems like I talked to the attorney for the City of Ventura, and she indicated that their client may be willing to agree to a stay, and that would enable settlement discussions to move forward. And so that's positive, but otherwise there's not much to report.
Bruce?
Yes, Bruce.
I attended the meeting,
You did?
yes, along with Mike Flood and Mike Hollebrands, General Manager of Miners Oaks. And the agreement was to get together on June 14th among the parties to share information on water use. There was a memorandum of understanding.
Bruce, I've had some debriefings about the meetings too, and I've been cautioned every time that we probably shouldn't be talking about it,
Oh, okay. Well, then-
okay? Just to protect yourself.
Okay.
I agree with Peter that there wasn't much coming out of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
I don't want to
fine.
get you in trouble.
It seemed like that was pretty brief and didn't indicate the amount of progress that was being made. I think it's more than that, but that's okay.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Yeah, William.
Just a question that occurred to me, since much more informed group in front of me on all of this. Has the Ventura City Council gone into closed session and been fully briefed on the situation?
That's a good question, you know?
I would guess yes, but I don't know that.
I just
I
wondered
don't know
for a
it
fact whether or not that, and it's all new city council, you know, not all new, but a lot of new faces.
Well,
This was started before the new elected officials were put in place. I would think it would be important for that group of elected officials to be fully briefed and up to date, and that could only happen in a closed session. I just wondered if anybody knew whether that's occurred.
I do not know.
Okay.
That's a
Sorry.
good point, that there's a turnover on the council. I know they did it before, but whether they.
Otherwise, the tail may wag the dog. Thank you.
That might be happening. It's a miracle. Okay, we'll move on to 9C, the conjunctive use agreement. Was there any luck putting together an ad hoc?
Not sufficient.
Okay. Well, let's just carry this forward, unless, is there anyone here who wanted to speak specifically about the, go ahead, Bill. Oh, yeah. 9C.
I had a speaker card in there. So.
I wasn't looking at it.
And that would be fabulous if an ad hoc committee was appointed, and that would be at least at some times open for public input in a more efficient framework than this kind of meeting.
Yeah.
That would be very, very useful. I just want to point out a couple of things. One is about 20 minutes before this meeting, I got on the internet and Googled, or I don't use Google, I use Bing.
Who?
I use Bing. Aquifer, surface reservoir, conjunctive use, just to see what would pop up. And I got a whole series of scientific studies
Yep.
that have, over a span of the last few decades on this specific point. I found one for India, one optimal operation of multi-purpose reservoir for irrigation planning with conjunctive use of surface and groundwater, and a few other studies. And my point is, I think there's some pretty well-developed methodologies out there for modeling, rather than just kind of guessing or doing it from one point of view. And it all depends on setting those goals properly within the model first. And I think that's the purpose of this whole exercise, and I was very happy to see that there does appear to be a fairly developed set of methodologies out there for modeling this. And I hope we go in that direction. The next point I wanted to make was that the general welfare of the entire valley should be the goal, not the goals of any particular agency or any particular framework of reference, in my opinion. And I think where this has been particularly important to consider is that I took a little bit of issue with the fact in terms of question number 6. How does a conjunctive use agreement help to preserve the water resources for residents, business, farming, and habitat needs? They're not equivalent, I don't think. The availability of water non-potable for ag and habitat is a whole different thing than the availability of water that's treated, that's potable, for residents and businesses. And so when we're looking at the issue of the aquifer and the ability of agriculture over, to me, maximizing the ability of agriculture for their pumps to be operating for potable water over a greater percentage of time over drought cycles is an important consideration. Because,
Explain that.
in other words, I'm kind of keying a little bit off of it, and I'm always willing to expose my great ignorance here, but after a careful reading of the minimum reserve concept for the reservoir, I started thinking about the idea of minimum reserve concept for the aquifer. The reason for that being that ag would then know with reasonable certainty, at least maybe not all the time, but maybe a higher probability of time. Okay, if I now know what I'm going to be able to do in terms of irrigation. I don't have to deal with wild fluctuations in terms of my infrastructure. And I hear more and more agriculture people telling me, I'm pulling stuff up because I have too much potable water that I've got to use for irrigation, and things don't pencil using potable water for irrigation. And when you factor in the benefits of ag to this valley, not just in terms of the character and the diversification of the economy, but also the protection from fire that irrigated agriculture provides us. The idea of, I think we ought to be looking at in terms of modeling the conjunctive use should include those considerations. And I'm not probably being very articulate about this, but I just think that it's important to look at the general welfare, look at the inherent differences between ag and habitat and businesses and residences, and at least my history teaches me, is that the concept was originally we do as much to recharge the aquifer, then we have backup with a reservoir, and then to back up the reservoir is outside water. That's the original concept. And we want to, I think there's a way of extending that in terms of looking at the fact that I think that maintaining agriculture has more external benefits that aren't monetized for the benefit of the agricultural operators than when you're looking at business and residences. Those benefits are pretty much confined to the benefits that those operators get from internally, whereas the benefits to the society, or the valley as a whole for ag, are considerably beyond those that are monetized or captured by the agriculture activity. And we need to think in terms of that general view, I believe, and I hope we can find some way of doing that in a conjunctive use study.
Okay, John, you want to write all that down on? Okay.
Well, I'd just like to comment on what you had to say. I think that's really what we have to talk about, is the values we have in this community and how we're going to utilize this resource in the best way.
Right.
And pitting one interest against another is never a good idea.
Right.
But I think there's a general consensus in this community that ag is of value to our environment.
Right.
The other thing is, I agree, I don't believe in a feast and famine approach to managing water any more than I do to managing my own personal finances.
Right.
You have a bottom where you don't want to go below.
Right.
So whether it's conservation on a routine basis that keeps you from going below, or finding alternate sources to use as a backup, I think is the kind of things we have to talk about.
Yeah.
And Casitas is in the midst of doing a study now on what the yield of Lake Casitas may be in the future, and we're going to need that information to help us decide how we're going to do this.
Yeah, thank you.
And that'll be coming on in the fall.
Yeah. So I just ask, please urge you to, when the ad hoc committee is there, to please, whenever appropriate, notice the meeting and get some more sustained input from the public and interested parties.
I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
I'll just add one comment. I believe that because we have just two sources of water, the lake and the basin, that the concept of conjunctive use is actually the opposite of most of the studies you've been looking at.
I haven't read the studies. I just pointed out they're out there.
Oh, well, then I won't talk to you about it.
No, I mean, I open to be educated, but it seems to me that that just a quick scan of the models is they're subject, they can be amended by changing the structure of the goals, and then the methodology can be applied to that goals that fit our situation.
Well, conjunctive use here generally, and I'm not saying this is the way it's going to turn out, but in my mind, it's use the groundwater first, leave the storage surface water alone until you need it.
Well, that may not meet the general welfare benefit of the entire valley, though.
Well, it might, though.
It might or might not.
Because it's a business decision for the farmers to make sure that they use the groundwater first because it's cheaper, and instead of going and draining the lake. we'll see how it works.
Right, but getting it from the lake means it has to be potable.
That's
They have to
right.
get delivery of potable.
There's only
not
two
on-
kinds-
I
there's only
I
two
think there's
kinds of water.
I think there's a difference of opinion here that could be subject to some analysis.
I think the other thing,
Right.
if we look at the data that we have and reformat it the way I requested some time ago, I think it's going to be blaringly clear that what happens when the basin goes below a certain point, all it does is increase the demand on Lake Casitas.
Right.
So there's already sort of a conjunctive use going on, but it's a financial issue of where you get the water.
Exactly. And then being a financial issue, Russ, I would point out that the original concept that we're all paying for is 3 sources of water, not 2.
What's the third?
The state water was the third source we're all paying for still. We all are paying for that access still.
Minimal taxes on the original proposal in 62, which, do we wouldn't really want to?
Now, we're paying for the allocation still in our rates.
I think
My
we're
point
getting
is that the
way-
original concept was 3 sources, not 2.
Well, even if the allocation was at 100%, 5,000 acre feet is not going to take care of this valley.
But the outside access is not limited to the allocation. Article 21 is available again this year,
Tell me how.
over and above the 5,000.
Get it here.
If we had the plumbing, we could get it here. Anyway, I
And
just-
our allocation. I don't know yet, Bill. Let's find out. Okay. Yes.
Real quick, can I comment?
Who's that?
Chet Hilgers.
Hey, Chet. God, I haven't seen you.
First time I've been to
in a-
this meeting. A lot of people here. So I'm new to this conjunctive use idea, and can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
So question 1 would be, is it possible, Casitas has now taken over the Valley Water Company for the city. Is it possible that they could drill a big well or many big wells at Grand Avenue and they could fill the tanks that they have spotted around the valley with that water to use for their customers,
all
domestic
possible.
customers? So that would be a concern of mine. And what I would say is we need a lot of public input and discussion, because I would be concerned about taking water from our basin and using it for areas outside of our basin.
We can't. Our enabling legislation makes that impossible to do. There has to be a true surplus of water before we'd ever give anybody the authority to move water outside of the district.
And that, see,
It-
I'm still
It won't
learning.
happen.
So I'm learning about all, so it's public
Here's
information.
here's the
would be
real
great.
possibility, though, Chet, is that if you drill deep enough, you reach water that is not drinkable, and all you have to do is clean it up and use that for some of the supplemental water. And that's not very expensive to do, and we can just get people to use the sewer lines to reduce the brine on the way to the treatment plant, and it all works.
Sure. So all of this, the conjunctive use is a new term I'm hearing
Oh, no, it's
around
old.
now.
It's
Well,
old.
I'm sure it is, but in my world, listening to other old timers in town, the concern is always taking the groundwater that belongs to the city and belongs to the valley, the farmers in the valley, and wheeling that out of the valley would be wrong.
No, that
in my
is
opinion.
illegal.
Okay,
That's never going to happen.
Right, well, illegal
Ever.
and impossible are two different
good to hear.
questions.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Unless it goes
But
to
just
law.
let me say one more thing, and I want all of the farmers who are listening to listen to it. Every person who has a parcel of land and they have a well and they use that water to put to beneficial use on their own property, that water use, that water right is stronger than anything that the city of Ventura has purported in this case that they've sued everybody with. It's older. It's older. It's an older water right, and you can't go around it.
All right, well, just hearing a lot of stuff around town, it's good to hear clarity, so. it
Well,
would
one
be good
thing I'd
to-
like to add, though, is it's kind of yes, you can't export water off of the basin, but Casitas does have the ability. They currently serve a third to half of the water over the basin from Lake Casitas. So they could reduce that potentially by pumping more water out of the basin. So it isn't leaving.
No.
The basin water is replacing lake water that's coming in.
But that's the conjunctive use.
That is.
That's the discussion.
And speaking of conjunctive use, I have no idea why, after all the rainstorms in the past 3 years, 0 water went into the San Antonio settling grounds by your house, Jim. I mean, I physically went out there and saw no footprints of anybody opening a valve with the water going by.
Well, and that's been the discussion. that-
So I will volunteer. I will set up a volunteer group to clean the fish screen at night.
We're working on that, Chet.
So-
We're gonna try to get
I
it
can turn the
fixed.
valve myself. I'll do it.
That's the trouble, it's over-engineered.
And it's
Yeah.
Hey, I'll physically do it. Take the motor out, I'll do it.
also a question for the Board of Supervisors,
Yeah,
since they own and operate the facility.
okay. Let's see, are there any other comments on conjunctive use?
If I may briefly, John's put together this letter, and you started going into it a moment ago. Just with respect to the ad hoc committee that we discussed at the last meeting and previous, it's pretty clear from the comments and board discussion that having an ad hoc committee that targets certain model quantifications, how much water's in the basin, how much rain fell that year, where the water levels are, what the stream flow are really just a portion of that input.
Yeah.
And it's critically important, if not more so, to balance the values, the desires of ag and city, not necessarily diametrically opposed, but with different interests and different objectives and different water quality demands and things of that nature. So it's quite complex what we're trying to embark on. The table that we put in the agenda package a few months back was really intended to simplify that and distill it just into the X's and O's, into the blacks and whites of quantification. And the other side of that coin is significantly beyond what a model can touch. I often use the term that modeling isn't hydrogeology like a hammer isn't construction. And in the same vein of putting together a conjunctive use agreement, it cannot just be black and white. It cannot be X's and O's. It has to have the understanding of values and desires and really feasibility of coming up with
Flexibility.
an adaptive management
Yeah.
of what is there, what can be used, and what are the desires to be used. So to that end, I think one of the reasons that we've kept the ad hoc committee at bay from our perspective is really it's wading into waters that are frankly above our pay grade. It's something that requires so much input from so many different people that the idea of a workshop, as John has started down, complete with easel and paper, is really the way to go. And if it's a separate workshop that the agency puts on, and as many members of the public are invited to really understand first what this concept is, what its history is globally in California, and frankly in the Ojai groundwater basin, where it's been practiced since
For a long time.
Since the dam was built.
even before then.
You're right.
And the thoughts of
61.
Lippincott studies 100 years ago that were looking at conjunctively using and diverting surface water from the Santa Clara River watershed north of us, through tunnels, through dams, through a Cold Springs dam that would have dammed the Sespe River
Yeah.
and diverted water through the mountain on gravity to do effectively what the Matilaha Dam came to do in the 40s. The idea of bringing water to this basin where, as great as it is, it still fills quickly and it still spills quickly. And it doesn't have the large volume of insurance that larger groundwater basins have. We have to use it conjunctively, we have to use it judiciously, and in a quantifiable management way. So I think maybe I can request, John, if you can just go through some of the questions for developing and start with the definition of conjunctive use.
And don't use resilient or sustainable.
Please.
Well, I would like to suggest, I mean, based upon certainly what we've heard tonight and last month, you know, there certainly needs to be, I think, a framework developed just to even go through a process. And so I would ask that the ad hoc committee or a ad hoc committee get together and not exclude the public, but say, what are the things that we want to do in this process to ensure that the public is included? I think that's important. So, and then, you know, you may decide you want to do some things in your board meetings, you may want to do in open public meetings and invite the community and work at bringing this all together.
We're gonna have to
It's gonna take some time,
bring in
but-
casitas too.
But I think the ad hoc committee initially should say, okay, well, how much work, how much effort do we need to put into this? And where do we start? And then we can start that.
I can answer that.
Okay.
At the beginning. Thank you. Anything else on conjunctive use? Then we have item 10, the informational items. I don't have anything that's
I'm
more.
sorry, before you, so I guess I'm not sure, we need to get this moving, but I'm not sure do we have a full ad hoc committee
Not yet.
established to
Nope.
start working toward an endpoint?
We don't.
So on, my ignorance, on an ad hoc committee of this nature, how many are you looking for? Since we're a board of 5 and
Two.
can't have more than, okay, 2.
You can only have
But you
two
can
for an
have-
ad hoc.
2 because of the Brown Act.
Yeah.
Correct. But it doesn't mean you can't invite members of the public.
Right.
Right.
Knowledgeable members of the public.
To be on, to
Yes.
Well, they could be either part of the committee, or they could also,
participate as,
or they can attend the meeting and listen and participate. So you can, that's part of developing the framework that I'm talking about. Deciding how do you want to move this forward, and who do you want involved, and who do you want included.
Well, I think we should let Jordan go ahead and put together a ad hoc committee who would like to volunteer. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Okay, we got 2.
Okay, so in our ad hoc committee, we have Mr. Finch and Mr. Hages involved. Members of the public are, of course, welcome. John will attend, I will attend.
And I'll make myself ex officio in case either one of the 2 can't make it.
Okay. Do we want to schedule a meeting time while we're all sitting here today
And we have our calendars handy.
at our pockets? Sure.
Unless you'd like to be ex officio, Mayor.
No, I defer to you.
This is gonna be an agendized, announced meeting.
Ad hocs don't have to be agendas, yeah. We could.
But you could have the first one to kind of just
Yeah.
get some groundwork and then come up. I would recommend that. We meet once just to line the ducks up a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so
glad.
somewhere around the 8th of May.
All right with me.
Where are we meeting?
I'm assuming we can use the OBGMA offices.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Being that Cece's there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'd target the time, 10 a.m.-ish, that she's available to.
Those offices include the conference room or something where the public, if they wish to participate, would have.
Later on.
There's plenty of room there.
Okay, I know the building. I
We can
just
have a
didn't know how
hockey-
much right you.
we can have a
planted
hockey-
your flag.
Sounds good.
So May 8th, 10 a.m.?
Yep.
Moving along.
Moving along, if there's nothing more on the conjunctive use agreement, and there are no other informational items, we're going to adjourn at 5:58.
I just have a question. Is there an update on the wildlife conservation grant? I heard it was awarded.
I did too, but I don't have any other.
We haven't heard anything yet
Okay.
at this point.
I understand that it was awarded.
That's correct.
Well, I assume at the meeting on Monday,
Yeah.
announce
Regina's been pretty busy putting together the localized
Yes.
county.
I think the last we've officially heard from it is that the grantee is officially the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, and they will be in contact with the various project proponents, including the city of Ojai, OBGMA, et cetera, that will have specific tasks and quantifications of funding.
And how much were you guys in?
I don't remember the exact amount, and there's so much overlap between the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Plan and the 26 projects that were involved in
Did
that
you and
grant.
Darren?
21 of them were either directly or indirectly associated with the Groundwater Management Plan of this agency.
Let's just say 6.
So even though the
558?
OBGMA may be indirectly managing a handful of
Oh, you did?
of
Oh,
project
okay.
dollars,
And
it
you'll get
still
that
has
back.
a sphere of influence on many of the rest of them.
For some reason, I heard it was like 300,000, but I don't know where that came from.
It seems to be a moving target of numbers.